Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of the SaaS Sessions podcast. Today we have Kuppulakshmi Krishnamoorthy on the show with us. Kuppu is currently the head of Zoho for Startups program at Zoho, and she spent more than a decade at Zoho, right? So Kuppu, such a pleasure to have you in the show today.
Thank you so much, Sunil. My pleasure too.
Awesome. So hey Kuppu, like I gave a very short intro on you. Like
Hmm.
can you tell us more about yourself and how has your decade long journey been like at Zoho?
Absolutely. I have been associated with Zoho over a decade now, but that feels like a lifetime all at once. If you put the theory of
Mm-hmm.
relativity, every day has been such intense learning, meeting people from diverse background. So I've lived every day to the fullest. So it does, in a good way, feel much longer than that. But I've
Mm-hmm.
been in the workforce since 2004. Before I joined Zoho, I was a copy editor. I worked with a lot of science magazines, and basically, I'm a microbiologist. I have a post graduation. I
Oh,
specialized in industrial microbiology, and then I moved on to editing and then training people on writing well and speaking well. And then I joined Zoho as a soft skills and communications trainer way back in 2010. And
uh-huh.
since then it's been an unbelievably rewarding journey with lots and lots of challenges, deep learning curves. I moved eventually from a traditional, trainer role who
Mm-hmm.
facilitated people to say the business story really well to telling the story myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I started representing Zoho in various annual user conferences and other seminars that happen across the globe, where
Mm-hmm.
fundamentally my strength in simplifying concepts or trying to use jargon in bridging the gaps between business owners and how they look at tech adoption. And then now I take care of the Zoho for Startups program. I'm kind of building it from scratch, and I have a very small team that helps me function efficiently. Other than who I am at work, I'm also a mom, and I kind of figured out during this pandemic that I'm more of an ambivert,
Uh-huh.
specializing more in introvert qualities, and then trying to understand more of how future of work and technology can be used as we define the new work from home.
Got it.
That's me.
Really, really interesting. I'm really curious to know, Kuppu, how did the shift happen from microbiology to communications trainer and joining a SaaS company, right? So was it like a planned decision or you just keep stumbling upon these new challenges for yourself?
That's a good question, Sunil. See, the more you learn every day, you feel very young in your
Mm-hmm.
mind. But at the same time, you also realize how long you've been in the workforce. Where now, if I look back, the transformation has happened really slowly, not very consciously. I didn't make a choice. When I started off, we weren't in the age of having a lot of job platforms, or
Mm-hmm.
Twitter was just born, and networking wasn't as much as it is now. You're not just one cold email or one nice LinkedIn introduction away from connecting with people. The area of how you would look at job versus career was very limited. So I just took what came in my path, where it was not very different from what I graduated in. But then slowly it is like, put your leg in one area and then start going deep and then slowly pull out of science. So I eventually moved from copy editing for science magazines to training people on how do you write well, how do you make a good marketing copy and all. So back in 2010, Zoho was hiring purely based on people that you know, like first references or friends who are very efficient. So I think my networking with some of the people who were indirectly connected with Zoho told me about an opportunity as a trainer. But after I joined
Nice.
one day, because we are Zoho, in Zoho you don't have cubicles, you have
Right.
people working from the VP to the head of marketing to head of administration. We all work, at least when we were in office physically, we all used to work in a typically a very physical flat hierarchy as well. So you walk into a floor, you wouldn't know from fancy cubicles who has the most powerful position or most experienced. That
Mm-hmm.
helped in connecting with Sridhar Vembutu at that time, who just casually threw a challenge at me saying, you know what, Kuppu, it's so easy to train people to how to stand on the stage, or what are the most important points on body language or presentation skills. When you
Mm-hmm.
start doing this yourself, when you start understanding products yourself, that's wherein lies the actual challenge for a company that is looking at scaling multifold. So I started learning products more like an experiment on myself, ask
Mm-hmm.
silly questions on how to understand jargons. So basically, I am that customer to whom you're selling your SaaS. And if I'm
Right.
not understanding how I'm going to use it for my business, perhaps you have to change the narrative, or you have to change the strategy around selling. That immensely helped in learning products, crafting useful presentations and webinars for the large audience. And it has been very, very rewarding. When I say rewarding, it has been immensely challenging.
That's a great journey, right? Like from micro biology to, like, heading now heading the Zoho for Startups program,
Yeah.
right? So really really interesting, Kuppu.
Hmm.
So like talking about stories, right? I believe that, and we spoke about this before as well. Like you use storytelling as a concept to at every aspect of Zoho, right? Rather
Hmm.
it be selling, or you're building products, or you're scaling up, you're acquiring customers, or you're retaining customers. So everything
Hmm.
has a storytelling aspect at Zoho. So
Hmm.
how did you build the culture from like a decade ago, right? I would believe that a decade ago marketing or selling, or all these aspects would be still considered as storytelling. I'm sure it wasn't a part of that like 10 years back, right? Like now
Yes.
definitely it's a part. A lot of people are evangelizing storytelling as a concept, bringing that to marketing specifically, and then not
Yes.
only marketing, right, like to sales as well, to building products as well, when they are talking to your users, getting feedback from them. So these
Hmm.
are all like you can bring storytelling aspects to multiple avenues in the same company building the same product, right?
Hmm.
But 10 years ago I believe that was not the case. So
Hmm.
how did you build up that culture 10 years back, right? How did you build up that mindset in people that hey, metrics are important, let's say in marketing, but what's more important is the art of storytelling, which is a qualitative metric or a qualitative ability. But then you have to focus on that as well, because you can't really measure, I believe, like how good a story was, right?
Yes.
Unless you tell a story, then people would engage with you, and then you bring on the quantitative aspects of the engagement, and then you determine, okay, if this story was good or not. Was it like this, or was
Absolutely.
it something different? Like how was your experience in building up the whole storytelling aspect at Zoho 10 years back?
You are right. The way we look at storytelling in terms of how you would look at business growth has
Mm-hmm.
changed over these years very slowly and steadily. And I do see a lot of leaders talking about this intangible side of business growth and everything. Numbers are very, very important. You cannot really have growth when you're not looking at your ROI or looking at strategies where, with meaningful or minimal investment, how do you bring on board new customers. And now when you look at this SaaS landscape and
Mm-hmm.
look at Zoho's growth over these years, from
Totally.
what we were doing in 2010, I have seen many of the products being born in Zoho, right? How
Mm-hmm.
user experiences to, the interface itself has changed from what I saw of Zoho CRM, one of the flagship products early
Right.
when I had joined, to how we use many of these tools even to run Zoho. Now when I
Makes
look
sense.
at this and why we are doing what we are doing, most of the times what we are doing involves a lot of numbers, bringing together great minds of sales strategies, or how we are working quarter on quarter, what is our
Mm-hmm.
core go to market strategy, who are our target audience. Now given today, look at especially India.
Mm-hmm.
Now the government is talking a lot about Atmanirbhar, being self sufficient,
Yeah.
in relation to what's happening across the globe, and how some of the power nations are causing negative and positive impacts. Now you have the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic also in this scene.
Right.
Become more than important. I think more and more business organizations, or anyone, even a startup who wants to do a breakthrough on why they are doing what they are doing, storytelling comes into the picture. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I read a lot. I follow people on Twitter to see what are the trends. how do people talk about. Now, even
Mm-hmm.
from the startup world, you see many of the people who are so-called unicorns, or some of them who have built successful businesses. If you follow them on a regular basis, consistently they talk about people and how
Mm-hmm.
you make them feel. Because
Totally.
in
Mm-hmm.
2010, what SaaS was, and today where we are, there are a lot of options. If you
Yeah,
don't want one product from a certain SaaS vendor, you have five other options at least to choose from. Now,
totally.
what differentiates you from the variety that is available in the market?
Mm-hmm.
Now you talk about trust. Now you talk about scalability. Now you talk about who are these people who are leading these organizations. It's very
Mm-hmm.
important to look at that. Now, if you see it, there are three things that come into the picture when you look at the why you're doing what you're doing. Who
Mm-hmm.
are the leaders who are running the organizations, who are talking about scalability? Two, are they really people oriented? You know, this joke that goes when someone says I'm a people person, there is a
Mm-hmm.
goose in the picture that says I am a geese goose. It's a given,
Mm-hmm.
what do you
Yeah.
mean by you're a people person? If you are a person, you have to. I remember what Daniel H. Pink says. I follow a lot of his writings, how he wrote a book called To Sell
Mm-hmm.
is Human, if you've heard of it. Now, when you
Mm-hmm.
think
Yeah.
about it, and when you bring it back to the business world, all of us are selling at some point. Be you are an
Mm-hmm.
evangelist or a salesperson, even internally, if you want to bring in a new design, you want to redo the user experience, you have to do a lot of pitch internally, right? The word stakeholder somehow is so boring otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
How do you convince people how good a storyteller you are, your art of persuasion? You don't say the business strategy of persuasion. You somehow you call it the art of networking, the art of persuasion. Correct? So this
Right.
takes a different part of the brain. Fundamentally, it's all neuroscience. So I am a great fan of what Daniel H. Pink says when it comes to business and
Mm-hmm.
storytelling, where there's one quote that goes, I'm not sure if I'm saying the words in the exact way, but
Mm-hmm.
roughly here is what it is. The
Mm-hmm.
future actually belongs to the kind of people who are who possess a very different kind of mind. So when you
Mm-hmm.
talk about the future, you're talking about empathizers and creators, people who
Right.
can recognize patterns, people who find beyond all of this there is a meaning to what you do,
Totally.
without which you cannot bring a change. Right? If you
Mm.
want to
Yeah.
motivate people who work with you have to give them autonomy. You have to be you have a sense of experience, mastery over what you're doing, which means you need
Mm-hmm.
depth. And then you have
Right.
to bring about a purpose. Today, if I have to wake up every day and I have to run towards what I am doing, which means I understand through the Zoho for Startups program, I'm empowering startups, especially during a pandemic. I'm
Right.
helping them without hiring more people. Will they be able to run their social media campaign? Will they be able to make some sense out of the data, the digital footprint that they are leaving?
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty much the answer to your wonderful question.
Yeah, that's no, that's really awesome. And I would also imagine, like, if you want a different outcome, or if you want to be a differentiator, let's say, as you mentioned, right, there are many companies. Like, if you're looking for one solution, there are like hundreds of products which are out there. And if you
Correct.
want to differentiate, or if you want to stand out, I guess storytelling or the qualitative aspects, right? Not only storytelling, but all the qualitative aspects which are there, that is the only way where you can stand out in that particular hundreds of companies, right? And it's really difficult to, incorporate these abilities as they are not taught. I'm not really sure that if these abilities are taught in MBAs or in B schools, let's say, right? This is something that mostly is incorporated by in a culture in a company. Like, if I join Zoho today, I know that the culture is of storytelling, so I immediately, if I'm not a storyteller, I would be in the group, and I would like somehow start becoming a storyteller down over the years. Or it is something that would come to me naturally, right?
I
Like
think it is a
I
learned skill. You are right. See,
Yep.
everything today, be it machine learning or artificial intelligence, the most integral part of it, if you look, it's the intangible side of it. How
Hmm.
biased you are or unbiased you are towards data. That's
Right.
going to affect the future a lot. what you're accelerating.
Mm-hmm.
With great power comes great responsibility. So how
Yeah.
you're going to handle all the data? Are you
Mm-hmm.
capable of doing this? But this is, I would say, it's an essential skill of survival for anyone, right? Today,
Yeah.
from where I was, it was easy for me to transition from a microbiologist to what I'm doing today. But today, if I'm going to sell the same story to students in college who are MBA graduates, it's not going to work. They
Yeah.
have to work a lot more harder. They have to show their work.
Totally. I think the
Yeah,
competition has grown as well in that way,
exactly.
right? Like if you
Yes,
have to be and come and become a storyteller.
yes,
But yeah, really, really interesting to know. Talking about storytelling, right? Like how do you use storytelling in different like stages of the funnel, right? Like bridging that gap between the quantifiable aspect and the qualitative aspect of marketing and or the whole funnel, right? Like at the end of the day, as a company, storytelling is important, but something called as revenue generation is also very very important, right? Like your
yes,
storytelling and you're getting people on, that's all good, but at the end of the day, like if I'm not getting numbers, then there's
true.
something wrong or there's something need to be changed, right? So how would you connect or bridge the gap between storytelling and revenue generation? Like I know that's a long bridge and that's a huge like jump directly from storytelling to revenue generation, but I would say that storytelling would come in all aspects of the funnel, right? Like from acquisition or awareness, then acquisition, then selling and retention as well. Like for awareness and acquisition, I would say people talk a lot on that, and there are a lot of articles and a lot of videos, a lot of stories already out there on these two aspects. So I would love to ask more on the selling side and the product building side and the retention side of storytelling. So can you tell us more on these three aspects in
Sure,
your
Sunil.
experience?
As you ask me this, it brings to my mind multiple points uh,
I would
throughout this
imagine.
journey.
Yeah.
Yes, because
Right.
Zoho's growth did not happen just with storytelling. Numbers are very, very important. Today, across the
Right.
globe, we have reached almost 50 million users from across the world, which means, see, this is just a number if you don't go to the depth of it. And this is as you mentioned a few minutes back, it's very integral part of our culture, and it comes from top down. The leadership
Right.
talks
Exactly.
about this all the time. There's consistency in this, what we are doing,
Mm-hmm.
why we are
Yeah.
doing. You don't open shop and then when things go difficult, you run in different direction. You go with what you have been doing all this while, and the metamorphosis
Mm-hmm.
happens slowly and steadily. Now,
That's
one,
important.
the
Mm-hmm.
organization culture is very, very important, but you can't do away with the ethics part of it. When
Mm-hmm.
you have the power to do what you are doing, are you doing it the right way?
Mm-hmm.
So, what are you doing with these numbers? What are you doing with the data of so many organizations that is trusting you?
Mm-hmm.
How are your security and privacy policies in place? Are they transparent? Are they available for people to read and understand? Most importantly, you
Mm-hmm.
keep talking about this. What is this gap? What is this bridging the gap that we always talk about? Why is that bridge is always, it's not going away. We all talk about it in different ways. That's also because this is where the storytelling comes. If I am representing the organization, I'm doing a
Mm-hmm.
presentation, for example, there are two ways to do it. One, I only keep talking about numbers, why we do more than 45 plus apps in Zoho that solves all your business needs and workflow automation.
Mm-hmm.
Or I walk, imagine me walking in between the audience, among the audience, and turning around and looking at this board and say, come, let's look at this story together. What are the challenges that you're facing every day? As a startup, I'm a small team. I am a small business.
Mm-hmm.
My founding team is very small, especially during the pandemic. I'm not going to go all over my hiring process, right? Though I
Mm-hmm.
can hire talent from across the globe. Now, with this small team, how functionable can I be in looking at various aspects of my business? Now, if I'm not asking these questions that rings a bell or makes people nod heavily and
Mm-hmm.
maybe smile or frown or make them uncomfortable, the strength lies in storytelling. So you have
Right.
to do a good duet between the primary singer versus the orchestra, always it is, right?
Mhm.
Likewise, the numbers form the backbone, but what makes us unique as an organization is the story that we tell. So today,
Right.
Zoho's tagline is software as a craft, where
Mhm.
how do you talk about craft or art or software itself without getting into the neuroscience part of it, where you know how the famous quote goes, if I'm not feeling it, I'm not going to remember it. So
Yeah.
the customer retention that you're talking about is all about how you're making them feel. Even if you're not giving them the right solution, even if you're not exactly meeting their requirements right away, are you respecting their time? Are you
Mhm.
listening to what their requirement is? Are you able to tell them or promise them a good deadline or when not? The honesty that you do in each conversation, that's what is going to help.
Mhm.
How
Totally.
contagious your idea is going to be about who you are as a human. What are the
Mhm.
things that you care about and consistently talk about? This all is not exactly a storytelling skill, but the virtue of you are fundamentally. I think that's what makes Zoho work, and I think somehow it seeps into you over a period of time.
Totally. And I believe that, the in this great show, Game of Thrones, I'm not sure, if you have seen, like Tyrion Lannister also says, right, like what unites people, it's not the armies, or it's not the community, it's stories, right? Stories is
Yes.
what something which unites people, and they bring together people to achieve the same goal, or to achieve the same milestone together, right? Like that stories.
Yes.
So really interesting to see how Zoho is using the storytelling aspect in different avenues, right? And
True.
talking about Zoho being so huge and so, like, widespread across the world, as you said, right? Like 50 million like customers, right? Depending on like one company, which is Zoho, to run their and manage their business, right? Like different aspects of the business. So in that way, when you're working at Zoho, I'm sure that you have to be someone who's a leader and not a follower, right?
Mm,
Like, because what you do is gonna be followed by 50 million businesses across the globe, right?
true.
So in that way, you have to like think a lot, and I'm sure like there would be a lot of research that would be going on when you're even making a small change or a small campaign out there, because that campaign is being followed by 50 million
True.
businesses. Now you have to be
Mm,
really thoughtful on like how you are you know implementing this particular thing or implementing this particular campaign. So how do you like keep that in mind, right? That you have the burden, or I wouldn't say it's a burden, but you have the strength, as you said, right? Like with great power comes great responsibility. Now you have this great power. Now how do you make sure that you're using this power very responsibly and laying down the path for all these other companies to follow Zoho in a way, right? Like in this particular aspect.
yes. It needs a lot of courage and
Uh-huh.
determination and intention, the purpose why you're doing what you're doing. So when the
Mhm.
leaders always are focused on this, and it's not one of the many things that they are doing, it
Mhm.
shows in the quality of result.
Mhm.
By it is not always easy to be the leader, to lead and bring about a change, because mostly you're alone when you're being the trendsetter. For example, when we decided that we will stop all the third party trackers that we have,
Mhm.
it's something that directly affects your revenue, but then you
Right.
still take it is of utmost conviction why you're doing. And we always believe that money is a byproduct of doing so many things right. So
Right.
it takes a lot of courage to take the decision when it's going to first hit your the fundamental outcome of a business, if it is to make money and not retain customers, and you're not going to look at these areas. But if you're going
Mhm.
to take decisions like this, where we stop the third party trackers from our side, and
Mhm.
if you see the creative team, the people who craft marketing and storytelling, they've been with us for a long time. We are
Right.
not giving birth to a baby and asking someone else to name it. What Zoho is doing, and how you would want to say a story that's very not very far, not only from our culture, but the ethical way of doing things. So we have a
Mhm.
creative director, we have a team that is in house, that works with customers, that brings out the story on why how they feel when they use Zoho. So to
Got
be
it.
a leader is not very easy, but
Yeah,
that's what makes it more interesting and more purposeful in this world. I
totally.
The third most important thing is, like I said, we use some of these tools to have a conversation internally, right from Sridhar Vembu to the chief evangelist to head of marketing. All of us use our own intranet tools to talk to each other about what could be the most effective strategy, or
Mm-hmm.
this in a way converts it from being a burden to a equal responsibility, because I am very good in understanding the trends of what's happening in the startup world, because that's the only thing I do day in day out. Now if
Mm-hmm.
I sit with someone who is good in marketing or crafting a good story or the data points, I sit with the sales head and see which is the state that gives us the most GDP and why. What are the
Mm-hmm.
first top 10 apps that are adopted by the startups, say from an edutech or a fintech based startups?
Right.
That gives me a good story point where data is not just boring, at the same time it's not just fluff. You're talking
Mm-hmm.
meaningful alternatives to how why tech adoption is important.
Right. Facts too.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally. And I believe this is what, this thinking is what something which led to the creation of the Zoho for Startups program.
Hmm. Yes.
So great. And can you tell us more on like what's the like Zoho for Startups program and what do you guys currently do?
Sure. This is we now this middle of this year we've stepped into the fourth year of this program,
Nice.
and we
Mm-hmm.
launched this around the same time we launched Zoho One.
Mm-hmm.
One clarification here is Zoho has been serving all kinds of businesses, nevertheless, irrespective
Right.
of this program existed or not. But we
Right.
wanted to serve this segment, with more focus, just like we are doing for SMBs or MSMEs,
Mm-hmm.
where the nature of your storytelling once again changes, right? If I'm talking about 45 plus apps, how is
Mm-hmm.
it uniquely helpful to the startups? What are the things that you need when you're setting up your business, right
Mm-hmm.
from when you're writing down your lean strategy, your proof of concept? Where are you scribbling down your ideas? Who is going to be your founding team? How are you going to change this into a business strategy where eventually this looks somewhere close to a minimum viable product or a service that you will give it shape to? So when you're
Totally.
adding wheels, when you're adding gears to this journey, many of us
Mm-hmm.
realize the importance of software only
Mm-hmm.
after a messy point you have reached. You can no more use your spreadsheets to
Right.
know who are your most potential leads that will convert into your users or someone who will consume your services or product. So Zoho for Startups was born when we were ready to sell this story of, irrespective of whether you're an early stage startup or someone
Mm-hmm.
who's already scaling up and ready to change your strategy that will fit your global scaling up. So we
Mm-hmm.
had all of these 45 apps rolled into one bundle called Zoho One.
Right.
Any startup on any vertical, irrespective of their stage of growth or their stage in funding or
Mm-hmm.
where they were in the process of scaling up, whether you are a 10 employee or a solopreneur, or you are someone who cannot start off with 40 people in your founding team,
Mm-hmm.
you come to Zoho One and pick up any of these apps that will help you in your workflow automation or employing a successful social media strategy. So Zoho for Startups was thus born. And even today, the learning curve is so deep where there is no pattern, there's a lot of chaos. I keep telling my team, we are working for startups exactly like a startup. No one
Right.
believes us,
Mm-hmm.
no one believes us, no one knows why we exist. But
Mm-hmm.
we look at data, we look at how the pandemic is impacting, we
Mm-hmm.
keenly look at the graph of the most adopted apps from Zoho that startups are picking,
Mm-hmm.
why some of them are shutting shop, and why some of them are scaling up more than ever. So it's,
Right.
it's a lot of stories through data that we are learning. And today we are going global. Across India, we organically have grown to more than 60 plus collaborations right from the government of India. So Sunil, you see,
Mm-hmm. Nice.
though it
Mm-hmm.
is number, okay, though it is number I'm talking about, We have
Mm-hmm.
given more than 30,000 licenses to various startups via this program. And
Right.
talking to people from Africa to Bahrain to many other regions, what
Right.
is fundamentally helping here is I'm taking the story forward.
Exactly.
Who I am as a
Yeah.
person counts. The
Mhm.
storytelling counts, the vulnerability, the authenticity counts.
Makes sense. No, that really connects the dot when you look backwards
Correct.
as well, right? For
Correct.
you. So,
Yes.
no, this is really interesting, Kuppu, and I think we have reached the course of this episode, and we'll shift gears to the lightning round. But this has been a really insightful discussion on storytelling, right? And why companies should do it, and how you can, bridge the gap between storytelling, which is a qualitative aspect, and your revenue, right? Like at the end of the day, revenue generation is also something which is really important. So
Absolutely.
that which is the quantifiable aspect, right? Like how you can
Yes.
bridge the gaps between these two. So
Yes.
quickly shifting to lightning round, right? Like I have three questions for you. These are not on storytelling, but your answers could be some stories, right? So
Sure.
great. Cool. So first one, what do you know about your work now that you wish you would have known when you first started?
That technology is not as overwhelming as it really is. You have to be persistent and ask stupid questions more confidently.
Yeah, stay hungry, stay foolish, right? Like, yeah, we just
Absolutely.
celebrated Steve Jobs' birthday, so like bringing
Yes.
you a quote from
Very
his hand.
contextual. Mm.
Yeah. Like second one, what did your biggest professional failure teach you?
My failure started really early in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I keep telling, my friends and acquaintances this joke from this movie called Mummy. What is it goes something anyway I forgot because it's a lightning round. But
Uh-huh.
then the failures teach you that you're human, and then to err is to human, and
Right.
you find your own way when you realize you learn the lesson and craft a good story out of these failure that
Mm-hmm.
motivates more people to become what they become.
Totally.
Your
See,
vulnerability is your greatest strength.
mm-hmm. Makes sense. And then the third one, what's the number one thing that has helped you shorten your learning curve? Yeah.
Time
Mm-hmm.
management, self discipline.
That's really amazing, Kuppu. So thanks a lot, Kuppu, for coming on the show, taking time and sharing all these amazing stories with us today. And I'm really glad that we could do this, and I could bring out this conversation with you.
Yes, the famous quote by one of my favorite persons, Maya Angelou,
Hmm.
goes like this: there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you.
Right.
So glad that I could share all of this because you asked the right questions. So I'm
Thank.
equally happy and I'm all smiles as I sign off from this podcast, Sunil. And I wish you
Mhm.
more conversations that could help the world be a better place. All the best to you.